Hello, everyone. Good evening. Boa noite. Hello. So, welcome to our seminar series in Latin America. This is part of the launch series of launch events for the postgraduate course in regional studies in Latin America of the Fundação Armando Alvares Penteado. It's a pleasure to welcome you here tonight. So, as you may know, our postgraduate course is focused on Latin America. However, it's just the first of a series of regional studies programs that we aim to launch in the years to come. And please, if you are interested in our program, you should reach us out looking at our internationalization website, which is in charge of this new initiative. And the idea is to form people who are able to cover Latin America in contemporaneous times in several issue areas, ranging from politics and economics to cultural issues, and of course, in line with this foundation's focus on creativity, arts, and business. I'm Professor Vinícius Rodrigues Vieira. I teach economics and international relations here. I'm in charge of the course on economics and politics of Latin America, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here today for the presentation that will discuss the geopolitical importance of the Panama Canal. As all of you may have heard, now the new administration in the United States has threatened this Central American nation uh, again to take over again the canal that was built in between the 19th to the 20th century, and which was returned to Panama's sovereignty finally in 1999 at the peak of the globalization age. As we are going back, it seems to an age of imperial powers in which at least the hegemonic powers, they are no longer bounded by the international rule of law, as we are discussing here before the beginning of this talk. It's a relevant topic not just for those interested in Latin America, but for students and scholars of international relations in general. So, soon we will start, and let me just here tell you who will be in the table to discuss this very important issue tonight. We begin with the Ambassador of Panama in Brazil, Mr. Flavio Gabriel Méndez Altamirano. Here, a brief bio of Mr. Méndez Altamirano. He's used to be the chief of protocol of Panama's presidency between 2019 to 2024 until last year, therefore. Also, among other functions, listen here, the most relevant ones, he was the professor at the Universidad Santa Maria la Antigua. Also, between 2001 and 2004, he served as the first general director of the Diplomatic here in Panama, and also exactly the time when the Panama Canal was returned to Panama sovereignty, he was the vice minister, interim vice minister of the foreign relations of Panama in 1999, but he also served in the same position in 1998 and 2006. Also, in other countries, he held several positions, including between 2012 and 2019. He was the ambassador in UNESCO representing Panama. UNESCO is located in Paris, as you know. And 93 to 94, he was the first ambassador of Panama in the Russian Federation and to the Community of Independent States, which was a group of countries formed after the dismissal of the Soviet Union, the group of former Soviet countries. Here in Brazil, he had several linkages with the country, including the fact that he even took part of the Rio Branco Institute, our academy. He did the course in 1980. And here we have also condecoration, the Rio Branco Order and the level of Grand Cruz, Great Cross, which is one of the highest condecorations in Brazil. So please, let's welcome Mr. Menendez Altamirano. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so let's just check. Yeah, please here. Por favor, aqui. And also tonight we have two online guests. So just to check whether they are listening us, Professor Leland Lazarus, can you hear us? Yes.
Yes, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great. No technical problems. So, Professor Lazarus, he serves as the Associate Director of National Security at Florida International University's Jack D. Gordon Institute of Public Policy. He's an expert on China-Latin American relations, which is also something crucial to understand the current geopolitical events that we are all witnessing. And he manages a team of researchers and interns that collect data and analysis on U.S. national security and governance in Latin America and the Caribbean. Also, Professor Leland, between 21 and 22, he served as the special assistant and speechwriter to the commander of U.S. Southern Command. He advised the commander on a broad spectrum of subjects, issues, and policy considerations related to China, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and how to develop SOFCOM's counter-PRC strategic messaging, PRC, Popular Republic of China, and provided focused support and operational and strategic research to the commander. Before that, he also served in other capacities to the U.S. state as a Foreign Service Officer at the Department of State of the United States, serving as Deputy Public Affairs Officer at U.S. Embassy in Barbados, and the Eastern Caribbean Consular Office at the U.S. Consulate General in Shenyang, China, and Pickering Fellow at the U.S. Embassy, Beijing, and the China Desk in Washington, D.C. Also, among other activities, he worked as an associate producer at China Central Television, taught language English in Panama as a Fulbright scholar, so he has strong connections with Panama as well, and also provided commentary to a wide variety of publications, including Voice of America, Washington Post, Miami Herald, Foreign Policy Magazine, and Seneca Podcast, and National Interest, among others. Also, he received throughout his career several recognitions, acknowledgments. He's fluent in Mandarin and Spanish, and he holds an MA in U.S.-China Foreign Policy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, and a BA in International Relations at Brown University. So let's welcome Professor Lazarus. Okay, thank you. Following the order of the program, we also have here the honor to welcome again Commander Robson Farinazzo. He's a Brazilian Marine Corps, and he currently runs the YouTube channel Arte da Guerra, Art of War, and he published the book The Leis do Sucesso dos Políticos de Guerra, Laws of Success for War Politicians. So please, let's welcome Commander Farinazzo, please. Last but not least, of course, we are proud again to welcome journalist Sylvia Colombo. Sylvia, she is a specialist on Latin American issues and currently is a columnist for Folha de São Paulo, which is a major newspaper in Brazil, as well as a contributor to ABC, a Spanish newspaper, and Revista Piauí, which is one of the top magazines in the country here in Brazil as well. And wrote the book O Ano da Cólera, published by Rocco, The Year of the Cholera, which explores the protests in Latin America in 2019. So let's welcome Sylvia Colombo, who is online with us.
Thank you very much.
So let me briefly explain how we will proceed. Here we have first the talk by the ambassador, Mr. Méndez Altamirano, until 7:50 according to the program. Then we'll hear Professor Lazarus for 20 minutes afterwards, then Commander Farinazzo, and then Sylvia will talk to us the subsequent 20 minutes, and then we will open up for questions in the remaining 10 minutes. So I'll just let you know about 5 minutes before you should finish your presentation. So again, thank you very much, everyone here, and of course the ambassador who will start this conversation tonight. Thank you.
Boa noite. I could speak about many things on Panama. We could talk about the history of Panama for a long time before. We could talk about all the treaties that we signed with the United States along the 20th century. And there are many other things, but since I have a specific time frame, I decided to choose information to share with you information that will allow us to understand us, Panamanians, a little more. And once you understand us, any other information that you will be exposed here or later in life will be better understood. So let me begin first. The Panama Canal topic didn't come up early as is 20th century or 19th century. It started with Carlos V, Roman emperor and Spain emperor, 1534 to be exact, that he ordered to do a survey of Panama in order to make a canal. But then in 1850, because of the gold rush, now I'm jumping years, Panama built a railroad in order to assist the transfer of all the people that were interested in going to the gold in California. So that railroad was the first physical transisthmus, and it was very successful. Then came the French Canal, but that lasted very few years. Although there is a lot of information on the French Canal. French Canal, oh, não, ainda não. Ah, mas ainda não é necessário. Pode deixar aí. Na anterior, na primeira. Tudo bem. Okay, I don't want to confuse because otherwise, okay. So the French Canal only lasted 9 years, and it was a big disaster, economical disaster. And that made the French eventually to contact the Americans and the Panamanians and sign a treaty. It was a French person that signed a treaty with the United States in order to be able to build a canal in Panama. And that treaty was signed and given the United States the opportunity to do it for 100 years. No, it was for eternity. They could stay there forever. Whenever nobody thought at that moment what would comply that. It was not only to build a canal, but they ended up building what was necessary for that time to build a canal, but also to build towns. So before I go into those details, let me put you some facts. I'm going to stop here for a second. And facts that you have been listening to all the media about the numbers of Panama. I'll mention very briefly in order to clarify that. You can ask questions later, and I'll be very quick on that. So there's news that says that 38,000 Americans died in Panama during the construction of the Panama Canal. According to the U.S. records that you can find there, because they have the records, 350 died, not 38,000. I'm quoting records from the United States. There are 5 ports in Panama in both areas of the canal. 2 of the ports are administered by a Chinese company of Hong Kong. That Chinese company from Hong Kong was when Hong Kong was part of Great Britain, and it wasn't during the current China. And they don't own, they administrate as a concession, as well as the other 3 concessions, which one it's from the United States. So they belong to Panama. And whoever they sell it, either BlackRock or anybody else, they still belong to the Panamanian government. There are 8,500 employees at the Panama Canal. It says that we have Chinese companies and it's being controlled by Chinese. Well, 8,500 employees. Out of the 8,500, 2 are Latin American nationalities, 6 are US citizens, and the other 7,492 are Panamanians. Okay? The ports cannot be blocked by anybody because all the ships, when they arrive to Panama, they moor, they stop about 3-4 miles outside, and they wait to marine traffic control. I'm saying all this because nobody's explaining it, you know. Marine traffic control tell them when they can go in. And what that happens is that they send Panamanian, a boat with a captain and a crew that takes over the control of the ship and the helm, and they drive, I put it the way, drive. They sail the ship into the canal, either across or to the ports. And if they have to move between the ports, are also as a Panamanian crew only for 25 years since we have the canal. So nobody can arrive with like a car and go right into the canal. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Now, it says, we built it, we own it, it was our money. You heard that phrase? Well, it happens that they built it. It cost 300, in today's dollars, 300, at that time, $375 million, which is about $12 billion today, the cost to build a U.S. canal. And they stay there for 85 years. Along those 85 years, it was paid a little less than $1.9 billion to Panama during 85 years. Now, bear in mind that amount. So, from 2020, exactly, for the past, from year 2000 to 2024, 24 years, the Panama Canal Administration had paid the government of Panama, the administrators who are Panamanian, $25 billion after expenses. So they could probably made twice as much. So how come we made in 24 years almost $40 billion, and between 85 years we got $1.9 billion? Where's the rest of the money? Of course, they went back to the Treasury, so they had their money back with a lot of additional money. So that is clear. Now I would like to explain you what it felt to have Panama. So could we go first to there's a Brazilian map, the first one. Yeah. Perdão, devia ter dito em português, né? Desculpa.
Poderiam colocar, por favor,
o mapa do Brasil. Brasil. Não tá?
Sim.
Embaixador, esse, né?
Esse. Well, this is to visualize. This is Brazil. I Google where were the two shortest distances in Brazil. Okay, and that's between Acre and Paraíba. So imagine for a second that you have, a space of a country in the middle of the Brazil. And whoever wants to go from below that line or above that line had to go through that country in Brazilian territory. Now imagine that territory is handled specifically by US law. Okay, so let's go for the next one. The next slide that has Panama map. O mapa do Panama. Exato. So Panama, it's east-west. That's the composition. So to the north, we have the Atlantic. To the south, we have the Pacific. To the east, we have Colombia. To the west, we have Costa Rica. In the middle, we have the United States. I mean, this is the only country in the world that in the middle has another country. Now, think for a second that, to make it in Brazilian standards, think that you're right now in Brasilia. I love that city. I'm in Brasilia, and either you live you have the Asas, right? And you have the top part or the bottom part. And then the eixo in the middle is the United States. How do you feel? And every time you have to go from the ministries, cross to go to the tower, or behind the tower, in the middle, you have to go through the United States, to a different country, whatever country. Let's not mention the United States. But I want you to understand that. My house was half a mile from a road that divided. So I will drive, and then I will find an American policeman there. And if I made a traffic violation, I'll be arrested. For instance, if it was bad traffic violation, go to a U.S. court, being tried, pay my fine or whatever, and then extradite across the street back to Panama. Try to think for a second that for almost 100 years, you getting the picture? Almost 100 years, right there in the city, Panama City. So, let's go for the next slide. Próximo. Obrigado. Okay. General Torrijos, who is a person that we could speak for hours, for decades, over a decade, negotiated with the Americans after inheriting several other trials from Panamanians that tried to make the Americans to return the canal. When he finally signed the treaties, there was an additional treaty which was called the Neutrality Treaty of the Canal. 41 countries had signed, and it's deposited in the Organization of American States. Basically, it says that nobody controls the canal and everybody can go through. In other words, during Second World War, no enemy of the United States could use the canal. You know, the Japanese tried to destroy the canal with a submarine that had a. Oh, that's another story. I wouldn't go into the war. I leave that to the commander. So you have here a General Torrijos and Jimmy Carter were very mature people. They realized that Panama Canal was indefendable. The only way to defend it was that everybody could use it, that nobody felt a threat not to be able to use it. So if you can go to a place, you have no enemies. That's why we can go during the war, Afghanistan, Iraq, all the ships could go through, even if they were part of being at war with the States or with the European countries. They could go through. And that is the best way we can have our survival, which is a neutrality. Okay, let's go for the next. Vamos para a próxima gráfica que tem hitos do Canal do Panamá. É só, it's only for you to see the dates, just to give you an idea, the dates of everything that we went through in different moments of our history. The main one in 1964. 1964, students from high school. At that time, the United States and Panama signed a treaty allowing, for the first time, to have a flag of Panama in the schools and the public buildings. 1964, remember, they're there from 1903. So flags for the first time. But the local civilians didn't want to put the flags. So students went across, and the police, American police and others, shot 21 of them and killed them. High school students and other people. Just like that, for putting the flag. That made Panama to break relations with the United States, and eventually, we went to sign a treaty, but government changed in Panama, and that was stalled, and it took about 15, 20 more years until we managed to put back in line our treaty and get the treaty. So let's go for the next one. And the next one just shows that in 2016, we had a new set of locks. This new set of locks cost $5 billion of our own money. We didn't ask for loan to anyone. It was Panamanian savings monies, and we paid for it. Now, vamos para a próxima. Now, the right locks that you see there are built by the Americans in 1903 to 1914, 1904 to 1914. The left ones were built by us. Tá grande, né? Good size. So we could have more bigger ships passing through. Let's go for the next image. Now, this image, none of you have ever seen it, and probably you'll never see it in your lifetime, because only 4 times have the Security Council of United Nations go out of New York to a country to talk about a topic, and this happened in Panama. The Security Council of United Nations in Panama, we managed through diplomacy, through our right to speaking, not at war, almost Mahatma Gandhi type style, to convince the United States, to convince the world, actually, not the United States, the United Nations, to have this event in Panama. And in this event, we proved that our cause was right. Okay. So as I said, you have had the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Ukraine, and still they're debating there. So you can imagine how important it was for the world to have that meeting in Panama. Because if there is a crisis in Panama, you have a 5% traffic stop, marine traffic stop in the world. As simple as that. And of course, that's for the world, but for the United States, it's close to 60% traffic. So we need peace, and that is the only way to be able. Rooms para a próxima? Então that's an ego trip, just to show how many routes we have from Panama to the sectors in the world. You can see how clearly East Coast to West Coast they move, and of course Europe and Asia. Next one, please. Okay, now the green route shows how short it is to go to that's the canal. The United States can also use the yellow line, and it's shorter, but using the yellow line, the cargo has too many handles. You have to go by land, by truck, by train, then back to the boat. So it's shorter, but the goods gets damaged, and it becomes a little more expensive also because of handling. That's the last one. We don't need the next one. Now I would like to go, and I know the question is for the end, but in case you can stop the presentation. Yes. Pode parar. Obrigado. Obrigado. Então agora, now, and this is basically the one to last of my presentation. In the end, I'm going to give you a short trailer of a movie that is being right now in Panama, created by Panamanians, that talks about the history of negotiations. But what I'm going to talk to you now is, it's thanks to a very important person in Panama called Jorge Eduardo Ritter. He was Minister of the Canal, the first Minister of the Canal, also Minister of Foreign Affairs. And he helped me with this information. This information shows how difficult was the process to Panama to make a law to be able to administrate it. Now, just for context, because I have to read. It's very punctual. The canal was not only what you see, the waterway. You also had military bases with people going in and out, but you also had the most complicated part, civilian cities with policemen, teachers, fire department, bowling alleys, cities. So what we got from the Americans was a city, a small country. And how we handle the small country, this is what we did. And this is an example of maturity of a country to be able to handle a very difficult situation. So I'm going to start reading. Panama was a country with 2 sets of rules, 2 sets of laws. You have the Panamanian laws that regulated all civil law, and then you have another law. Panamanian law is Roman law. Then you have the law that was used for the Canal Zone, governed by the United States and applying their own laws. So we have 2 law systems. Under that premise, the Panama Canal Zone has its own title under the United States regulation, Title 35 of the Code of the Federal Regulations, which cover all administrative matters, including health, sanitation, environment, procurement, and navigation requirement. Judicially, the Canal Zone was included under the law of New Orleans, Louisiana. Louisiana Judiciary District. Therefore, criminal and civil matters were resolved by U.S. judges based on the New Orleans. So if I got a traffic violation, I'll be judge. Please think what I'm saying. You have a foreign country with foreign law of Louisiana trying you for a criminal right across meters from your country. Okay, so the process of dissecting the canal zone is the whole thing, and returning to Panama. By 1992, the court system was, after the signing of the treaty was in 1977. By 1992, the court system, U.S. court system, was dismantled. The police, the garbage collection, railroad and ports were no longer needed, and those were returned to the government of Panama. 1978, the government created the first Autoridad del Canal de Panamá with the mission to get prepared for getting the canal, because they will give us the canal between 1977 to 1999 in stages. Why in stages? Because the Suez Canal is very easy. It's a straight line in the desert. There are no locks. Engineering-wise, it's very simple. Administratively-wise, it's very simple. But the Panama Canal was administrated by people very specialized. The Americans were very well trained. So we decided, we realized that we couldn't take over like the Egyptians did. We have to go by stages. And as the Americans were being retired, Panamanians would be trained and fill in the post. That's why it took from 1977 to 1999. Again, still suffering those problems, but maturely not forcing the United States out and getting each post with a duly trained Panamanian for that position. Okay, so that we have that first story. But then the constitutional title. During 1993 forward, the Panamanian government made a transcendental decision. They decided to separate the derivation of the military and civilian installation from the canal itself. That's why we created an entity called Interoceanic Region Authority. And they were to administrate all the lands, the military and the civilian installation, separate from the canal. It was a different group. In 1993, the president back then, Indara, he decided to talk to all political parties and said, okay, we have to create a new law to administrate the canal. But I need to make sure that you will respect that once my period is over, because that's the only way we can make it. So he did that, and all the political forces got together and realized that they have to comply and accept that change. So a political compromise was eased, the way for a constitutional reform that incorporated a special title in the Constitution of the Canal, and only for the canal. In fact, the Autoridad del Canal de Panamá is the only entity with constitutional rank. Anybody here is a lawyer? No? So, okay, so it's an entity with constitutional rank, meaning that it's only entity which is directly claimed by the Constitution. Any other ministries or any other Petrobras or anything to make it, they are created by law. But this one was created by a Constitution. The amendment was approved in 1995, and it had to be approved by 2 consecutive legislative bodies. So everybody accepted, and it was accepted unanimously by all political forces. Okay. They agreed that the canal, in fact, the constitutional amendment gave the board of directors, and this is very interesting, the board of directors of the Autoridad Canal de Panamá, the exclusive responsibility to approve regulations on certain matters for application of the canal law. These quasi-legislative powers, it was only exercised by them, not by the states, in order to implement the constitutional title and prevent the United States legislation to continue to rule the canal. In 1999, a transition commission was created. And once the law came into force in 1997, the members became director of the Panama Canal Authority. And at that moment, they became the person that will make the laws. So let me put it this way. For that moment, in those last years, meetings with all the political forces, all the civilian areas, they met in a place called Coronado at that time, which is it's like when you take everybody to go to outside and go to cuando você vai para uma reunión con los alumnos en una montaña para conversar. So we did that. All the political forces, they closed the doors and everybody spilled their guts out, trying to find all the right solutions to administrate the canal. The revision of the canal and the related areas and installation were widely discussed. It was established that it should serve to promote the integral and national development. It was noted that the revision of the canal also imposed challenging of maintaining and improving the interoceanic route administration. It was critically important to exclude political parties or sectoral interests in the canal decision. It was agreed that the board members should be appointed based only in qualifications, merit, honesty, and that it was utmost important to guarantee labor conditions and the right of laborers to develop the Panamanian skills, and also to increase women's participations in all levels of the canal. Today, the deputy administrator is a woman. The environment preservation of the interoceanic region was considered a vital factor. I'm talking 1990s. Okay. Those meetings were preceded and overlapped by various workshops held in the cities. 2 bills were discussed and they were agreed, and eventually an organic law was enacted. This is the last part. So we created an organic law that stipulates the canal has to be profitable and the operation needs to be successful so we can pay for the improvement. So the Panama Canal has a few I need to highlight those things. The employees of the Autoridad del Canal de Panamá are the only employees in Panama who are not allowed to have a strike. Não pode ter greve. Because otherwise you will be stopping the marine traffic in the world. Okay. An independent labor committee was created by law to deal with the labor dispute between the Panama Canal Authority, instead of the Ministry of Labor or the labor code applicable to the rest of the country. In other words, the labor code of the rest of the country doesn't apply to the Panama Canal. The Autoridad Canal de Panamá has a separate and unique contracting and procurement regulations and processes, and does not use or abide by Panamanian government law or its processes. The authority has its own money, its own patrimony, funds and reserves, and the right to manage the money. They cannot give money away. They cannot provide donations. They can get external financing separate from the government financing. The government can ask for money to the World Bank, whatever. They can do it separate from the government. No other entity in the country can do that. The ACP budget is separate from the budget of the rest of the government and runs in different periods, and can only be approved or disapproved by the cabinet, but it cannot be modified by the cabinet. The ACP is audited by private external auditors and prepares its own financial statement. It's not audited by the government. The board of directors is a governing body, and its members are designated in a staggered manner, so that no government can designate a majority of the board members. And each member has 1 vote. So all the political forces realize that we need to have a canal bulletproof from politics. That's why we created that constitutional appendix, organic law. And it's the only country in the world that has been able to do that, as far as I know. And it took us over several years, I've been losing track of all the years that I mentioned to you, to arrive to that conclusion and to be able to get that formula. So when countries and politicians says that we need a discount or we need different prices, it doesn't work that way. The Panamanian government can't do anything. It is the board of directors. And they have, by law, and by the treaty signed by the United States in this case, to comply with being able to be profitable, being able to handle itself, be neutral, and in the law, in the document, it says you cannot have preferences to anyone. Oh, yes, the United States has one privilege. Any military ship that arrives in Panama can go through first. They arrive and they don't make the line. All the rest of the boats in the world, they have to get into line according to a system that we have. So everything that I said is written, it exists. And it shows that that's why Panama has been so successful in handling the canal. You haven't heard any problem with the Panama Canal. And no politician, no governor, no mayor, no president can mingle with the administration of the canal. Now, the last thing that I would like to show you is a video. Pode mostrar o vídeo. That video is a trailer. It's 2 minutes about a movie that is telling the history of those years of Panama negotiating the treaties. It's in Spanish. It's a little difficult to understand some parts. There is a funny part that General Torrijos is the main character. And that phrase... Pode parar momentinho.
A thin sliver of water which...
So, that phrase, hijo de tigre y mula, Gabriel Garcia Marquez was a friend of the general. And he said that general was a crossbreed or a son of a tiger and a mule. Tiger, because you know the correct history of the tiger. But the mule was that you can't make a mule to, the consistency to turn around. They go and they go. And his persistency along 3 administrations, U.S. administration, Democrats and Republicans, made General Torrijos, and that's the film about, to change his strategy and accommodate in order to be able to get the canal without a fight. Just by common sense, proving it was right, and making them the partnership, trying to make good partnership. So let's go.
separates the great land masses of the Western Hemisphere is one of America's most important outposts, the Panama Canal.
Panamá limita al norte con el Atlántico, al sur con el Pacífico, al oeste con Costa Rica, al este con Colombia y al centro con los gringos. ¿Qué necesito ayuda?
Este tratado, que deroga el tratado que ningún panameño firmó, no cuenta con un total consenso en nuestro pueblo.
We bought it, we paid for it, we built it, it's ours, and we intend to keep it from here on out.
Yo no le voy a dejar a las futuras generaciones un país ocupado.
La América Latina toda está al lado de Panamá.
Estados Unidos vetó el proyecto de resolución en apoyo a la causa panameña, pero el mundo entero vetó a los Estados Unidos.
Cuando mi hija mayor tenga 36 años, el canal va a ser de ella. Y así de todos los panameños jóvenes que hoy deben estar viendo cómo este es el principio del fin.
Un estadista es aquel que piensa en las futuras generaciones. Y un político es aquel que piensa en las próximas elecciones.
Un pueblo determinado a defender su libertad no puede ser vencido.
La historia la hacen los pueblos de forma colectiva, o si los individuos son los que determinan el curso de los acontecimientos de la historia. Los pueblos son los que hacen la historia.
Pode parar. Just to finish, as I said, I couldn't talk for many things, but I wanted to understand what is to feel like Panamanians in that condition, and then everything else you will be able to understand. Okay? Thank you very much.
Now, after thanking the ambassador for this great presentation, let's now... Okay, could you turn off the video, please? Thank you. Obrigado. So let's now listen to Professor Lazarus from Florida. So the floor is yours, Professor Lazarus. Can you open the microphone, please? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak at the Fundación Armando Alvares Penteado, this very prestigious institution in Sao Paulo. It's a shame that I'm not there in person to be there with you all, but I'm there in spirit. Ambassador Méndez, thank you so much for your incredible remarks. And as somebody who is gringo 100%, I was born and raised in New York, but both my parents are Panameños. My dad's from Colombo, and my mom is from Paraíso, in la zona de Canal. And so my grandma, when you're telling the stories about two separate societies and a country within a country, you know, my grandma worked in the Panama Canal Zone, and she was paid in silver when, you know, the Americans were paid in gold. So my family definitely experienced the exact things that you were talking about. And also the video that you just showed, talking about the hardship, right, that the Panamanian people really had to go through and suffer through, and what it feels. It's just a taste of what it feels like to be an actual Panamanian. It's rough. It's rough, and that's why when there's comments from the U.S. president that the U.S. needs to take back the Panama Canal by force if necessary, you know, that digs up the old ghosts, right, of 1989, the invasion of Just Cause, right, or it goes back to 1964, you know, the Mártires. And I think that's why we saw such a large and powerful reaction among the Panamanian people when Secretary Rubio, when he visited Panama a few months ago, and there were protests out, and people were saying "Ni gringos ni gringueros, Panamá primero," right? So no Americans, Panama first. So I agree 100%. I do want to spend a couple of minutes today to share the thinking from the U.S. national security and defense establishment. Now, I'm not saying that what they say or what they think is right. I'm very much willing to debate this. And Ambassador Méndez, you brought up some very specific logistical reasons why it would be exceedingly difficult for any foreign entity, Chinese or otherwise, to try to stop the transit of a ship through the canal. But I do want to spend a couple minutes to explain the U.S. national security point of it. But before I do, I want to take us back to 1997. 26 years ago. This was when the U.S. House of Representatives hosted a hearing about the potential national security implications of returning the canal back to Panama. Right? And this was 2 years before it was officially done in 1999. And one of the experts who testified at that hearing was Dr. Tomás Cabal, who was a professor at the University of Panama. And it's interesting because a lot of the things that he brought up in his testimony, a colleague of mine shared it with me just a few months ago. And what he brought up, it seems as if it came back from 2025, not 1997. Right? He brought up, for example, the fact that the PRC was seeking to expand its influence in geostrategic key areas. Right? He brought up the fact that Li Ka-shing, who's the CEO of then Hutchinson Whampoa, you know, today it's CK Hutchinson Holdings. Yes, of course, it's a private company. It was based in Hong Kong. But he also explained how Li Ka-shing himself was close to the Chinese Communist Party, and the potential gray areas between a private company and the Chinese government. And he mentioned the fact that the United States was pulling away from the region, and that the Chinese were filling a void or a vacuum that was happening, right? All this was said in 1997. I think though that testimony fell on deaf ears 26 years ago, I think they were quite prescient, and I think that we're seeing a lot of those issues coming to the fore today. Now, let me explain the way that the Chinese themselves talk about their grand ambitions, their military ambitions, their security ambitions. We know that President Xi Jinping himself has said that by 2049, by the 100th anniversary of the founding of the PRC, that he wants the People's Liberation Army to be a world-class military, right? They've also said that the People's Liberation Army Navy needs to transition from being mostly a brown water navy, right, or a navy that can only patrol within its own borders, within its own region, to a blue water navy, where they can be able to operate overseas, where they can have sustained overseas operations. And to do that, military writers, planners in the PRC have called the need to create what they call 战略支点, or in English, it's strategic support points. Now, this is very distinct or different from, say, a military base, which they understand. They look at the U.S. Experience, and they see how having an actual military base is quite expensive. It causes potential reputational harm if the local population doesn't want it. And so instead, they think that these 战略支点 would be much more cost effective, that these areas would be used for potential resupply, for potential oil shipment for its naval vessels, and that they do not have to be for military purposes, right? It can be for commercial purposes, but PLA Navy vessels could potentially use it for port calls and so on and so forth. So when you hear that, when you read that, when you know that is the overall global strategy of the PRC, and you also know that there are 129 ports around the world that have some form of PRC, state-owned shipping company or private company ownership or stake or operation. If you are a US military planner, you get quite concerned, right? Now, of course, the biggest national security concern is what, of course, Ambassador Méndez had mentioned, the two ports, the Port of Cristobal and the Port of Balboa, and the potential ownership or operation of those two ports on either side of the Panama Canal by C.K. Hutchison Holdings. Now, again, 26 years ago, that was not an issue at all. No one turned a bad eye. Nobody batted an eye to that decision, which was made in a commercial, open bidding way. But unfortunately, the situation has changed, right? In the almost 3 decades since Hutchison first won that bid to operate those two ports. The first is that Hong Kong is different, right? Hong Kong was sort of a bastion of democracy in the largely communist country. But of course, ever since 2019, the PRC government has really cracked down on Hong Kong itself. That coupled with the fact that there was the 2017 Chinese national security law and various other amendments to its national security and national intelligence laws, basically requiring, whether you're a state-owned enterprise or a private company, that you have to either share information of your customers, or in the case of national security, that you would need to support the Chinese Communist Party in the case of national security. If you think about that, then again, the fact that a private company that was based in Hong Kong was running or operating these two key ports, that was still considered quite untenable from the U.S. national security perspective. And of course, the concern is that, let's say, the U.S. and China in the future enter into some military conflict over the Taiwan Straits or the South China Sea, and the U.S. Navy would need to quickly deploy its naval vessels from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The fastest way would, of course, be through the Panama Canal. And of course, as Ambassador Méndez had mentioned, the U.S. naval vessels have sort of priority transit anyway. But the concern would be that there would be some way, whether it be stopping up cargo that was going through those two ports, or some sort of cyber conflict or issue, that CK Hutchinson would be pressured to do that kind of thing in order to delay or stop U.S. transit in some way. So in many ways, the BlackRock deal neutralizes that concern in some way, even though, of course, the Chinese regulators have postponed that and are looking into the project. But I would also argue that CK Hutchinson is just one of many different Chinese companies that have either bid on projects or are building certain projects in or around the Panama Canal that also could constitute a national security concern for the United States and a sovereignty issue for Panama. I think of China Communication and Construction Corporation and its subsidiary, China Harbor Engineering Company. Both of them are state-owned enterprises. Both of them have supported the construction of military islands in the South China Sea by the CCP. China Harbor is building this fourth bridge along the Panama Canal, and there's concern that, could Chinese intelligence officials help to basically leverage this project in order to put sensors on or cameras on, so that they can then monitor every single cargo vessel, every cargo container that may be passing through the Panama Canal. And that would, of course, give strategic advantage to the PRC in the event of some sort of conflict with the United States. There, of course, was another project, the Panama Colón container port, that was a concession that was originally given to a consortium of Land Bridge, which is a Chinese company, Shanghai Gorges, another company. It was since revoked and taken away because of undue delays with that project, and now a consortium of NOTARC and MSC has that project. The Chinese consortium has actually sued, and that project is still in litigation. But again, those are incontrovertible state-owned enterprises that have direct ties and allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party. And another thing I want to mention is the use of strategic corruption. This is what a colleague of mine, Professor Eduardo Gomarra at FIU, he calls it strategic corruption. And this is the way in which the PRC government and or PRC companies leverage high-level officials or local officials in order to further their commercial and political interest in the country. We know that, unfortunately, during the administration of a previous president, Juan Carlos Varela, that Panama switched diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to mainland China, and local reporting from La Prensa, from Panamá Américas, these are local Panamanian newspapers. There was real concern that President Varela himself had received certain funds from the Chinese side in order to facilitate that. Another protege or colleague of President Varela, Jorge González Barrios, who is currently a member of the ACP. There's, of course, concerns or allegations of González Barrios also being quite close and having quite close business interest with Chinese firms as well. Again, this is not accusations coming from me. This is from reporting coming from local Panamanian news sites. Now, as I mentioned before, solutions for this. The solution is, of course, not like what our American president is doing, saying that we need to take back the Panama Canal by force, infringing on Panama sovereignty. That's going to get us nowhere. But I do know that the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is in Panama right now because U.S. Southern Command is hosting the Central American Security Conference, or CENTSEC, in Panama. They're bringing together all kinds of Central American military leaders in order to talk about various areas of cooperation. And I think one of the things that will be on the agenda is trying to help countries to set up investment screening mechanisms. Now, this is similar to an investment screening mechanism that is in the United States called CFIUS. It's called the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. Now, it is by no means perfect. It has its own huge issues and things, certain investments that were approved by CFIUS years ago are now being looked at because of potential national security issues. But the concept of CFIUS is that various representatives of different departments or ministries of a certain country, they all review a specific potential investment from a foreign company, right? And so let's say it's an investment from a Chinese company in a key infrastructure project. Well, not only the Ministry of Trade, but also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, and all the relevant ministries would be able to really do a comprehensive review of that investment before that investment goes through. I think that adds another layer of potential scrutiny onto projects that may, again, seem really great and may be a great value, may have underbid all other competition, but may have some potential national security and sovereignty issues down the road. So setting up an investment screening mechanism. The Panamanian government under Jose Raul Molino has said that they're doing a comprehensive audit of C.K. Hutchinson's port holdings in Puerto Cristobal and Puerto Balboa. I would suggest that that administration go a step further and do a comprehensive audit of the other companies that I had mentioned: China Harbor, China Communication, Landbridge, Shanghai Gorges. Because again, those companies, because they have direct ties, they're not private, they are state-owned enterprises, and have examples elsewhere in the world in which they've leveraged commercial ports for potential security and military purposes. It warrants a comprehensive audit. Investigative journalism. I would say that investigative journalism is key in order to make sure to keep, to reduce potential corruption and reduce the potential influence that Chinese companies, Chinese government officials, and also local people who may be advancing Chinese interest within the country, limiting kind of the influence that they can do. And I think supporting investigative journalists in order to uncover some of these connections, like the examples I had mentioned, President Varela, Jorge González Barrios, and some others, I think is really key in order to advocate for transparency. And last but certainly not least is we need to provide, we as in the US partners, allies, need to provide a viable alternative to the very real and tangible economic projects and benefits that Chinese companies are providing. I understood very clearly when President Molino met with Secretary Rubio, and at the press conference afterwards, he said, I invited Secretary Rubio here in order to talk about investment, right? And I think that was a very clear message and a very non-subtle dig at the US to say, listen, you have ignored this region, this neighborhood for quite some time. And yes, there was focus on the war on terror in the previous decade, and now there's been a focus on the Indo-Pacific and the Taiwan issue in these previous years. But meanwhile, over the past 2 decades, the PRC has dramatically increased its economic and political and, in some cases, security partnerships with various Latin American and Caribbean countries. And so we need to either put up or shut up. To be completely candid and honest, to talk to my American colleagues, we can't just be wagging our fingers and saying, don't do this, don't do that. We need to actually step up our game and actually come with potential US private sector investment. There's the Development Finance Corporation, which I don't know to what extent the Trump administration will use and leverage the DFC in order to support various investment projects. They already have a project in, I think, Ecuador, where they're helping to expand a port in Ecuador. Well, they should be doing some similar things in Panama and elsewhere in the country. And so we need more BlackRocks. We need more deals like BlackRock, but we can't stop there. I think, again, the Panamanian people have spoken, and the US needs to step up and put up or shut up with regard to being a partner of choice in this struggle for support in the 21st century. And I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Let's thank Professor Lazarus. Yeah. So now we have the pleasure to listen again to Commander Farinazzo. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you. You hear me, everybody? Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe all you were asking yourselves, why I have to hear a whole Marine talking about security, talking about ships, warships, and about a situation that is not familiar to me. Well, I try to explain for you. We are entering in a new world. It's more dangerous. It's uncertain. I was born in the Cold War. I saw the Cold War dies, when the Berlin Wall come down. I saw this. And now this, in that moment, the unipolarity was the birth of the unipolarity. So now the unipolarity is dying. And we don't know what is ahead. We don't know. So I believe it's, all my life, I was trained to defend the people. It was my job. And I believe that I need to give a legacy for you in security and especially in hope. You're the best, all you are the best generation of the humanity. No one generation has the amount of information that you have today. So all you can make great things. You have a bright future ahead, but you need to know what's going, what is out there. And I try to show you a lot of these aspects. Você pode passar abrir a apresentação pra gente? Well, our lecture is the strategic meaning of the Panama Canal. So go ahead, please. Aqui? Pode passar o próximo. Esse vídeo, pula ele, deixa esse vídeo para o final. Deixa esse vídeo para o final, pode deixar para o final. Pode pular ele. Isso, pronto, esse aí pode passar. You can pass this, please.
Why does the United States...
Tem um som. Tem que voltar. Isso, esse tem som.
Why does the United States believe it has the right to a place that tore a country in half, took 25,000 lives over 40 years of construction, and became a global power center? Just over a century ago, the Panama Canal did not exist, and two oceans were separate, forcing ships to take the long route around South America. At that time, the USA was annexing islands in the Pacific and saw an opportunity to quickly move warships if a canal was built. The French had already tried to build it, but the difficult terrain, miscalculations, and tropical diseases led to failure. The US resumed construction but faced rejection from Colombia. So Washington supported an uprising in northern Colombia, and as a result, independent Panama emerged, ready to approve the project. The US gained full control of the canal, paying Panama a token sum, nothing compared to its profits, which triggered a wave of protests. Eventually, Washington signed an agreement. And since '99, Panama has officially owned this canal, which now handles 6% of global trade and generates huge revenue.
I cannot explain for you the importance of the Panama Canal as our ambassadors made. He is a specialist and he was born in that country. I cannot add anything to his lecture, but I try to show you the security aspects in the Panama Canal, United States, and the rest of the world. Please, ahead. Próximo. What is American warship crossing the channel? And you can note the complexity of the operation. And everything that is complex has some vulnerabilities. This is the channel. They compress the time, but it's a very large operation. Well, o próximo, por favor, please. Não, esse aí já é repetido. Bom, the Panama Channel opened in August 15, 1940. Everybody knows this. Please, the next. Próximo. Now, begin the problems. As you said in the first video, the Panama Canal was a plan to United States to extend his dominance over Atlantic and Pacific. So they took Hawaii, Filipinas, Samoa, and other islands in the Pacific in World War II. In 1922, the US Navy made her first aircraft carrier. Until today, the main force of projection of the United States are their aircraft carriers, but the most powerful force of the United States are their submarines, the silent service. We never talk about submarines. We never know where are they, but they are the really danger. So the press and everybody likes to see their aircraft carriers, but they are not the main problem. Please, o próximo. Well, when you use the Panama Channel, you short the distance to navigate. Okay, so less fuel, less time. You are more fast to stay in the position for an attack or other type of projection. Please, por favor, próximo. The Panama Channel has shortened the trip for 25 days for the navies. Okay, for the military ships. When you talk about commercial ships, you have another considerations. Por favor, próximo. Well, U.S. Langley crossed the Panama Channel in 1924. It was the first aircraft carrier. Tá. Vamos lá, então. Muito obrigado, doutora. No problem, no problem. Well, this is the USS Langley, the first carrier to cross the channel. Please, the next. Well, see here you see the problem. The USS Lexington, that was sunk by Japanese in World War II, they hit a mast in the channel. Every time that the carrier crossed the channel, they have problems, every time. But it was essentially strategic for the United States to have the control of the channel, because you can put a fleet from the Atlantic to the Pacific and from the Pacific to Atlantic. The next. Oh, now you see the Philippine Sea, and you can note that he's just in the locks. It rests a little space between the hull and the walls. It was a marginal operation for that type of aircraft carriers. Please, the next. The USS Tarawa, it's not aircraft carriers, just helicopters and VTOL aircraft. They're aircraft that they take off vertically. So it's not so powerful as the conventional carriers. And you see, it's very straight, his operation. Please. The U.S. Bonhomme Richard. Well, I believe that all these aircraft carriers, they did not have a good fate. The Bonhomme Richard caught fire 3 years ago and was decommissioned. The Lexington was sunk, and another, I believe, almost all the carriers that passed through the Panama Canal, they have a bad fate. I don't know why. Oh, not all of them, but yes. The next, please. Well, if you want to see all this video, is this channel, the Warshipologist. Is a channel specialist in warships. Please, the next. This lecture is dedicated to the memory of the 25,000 workers who died in the construction of the Panama Canal. But it's not the end, okay? Well, let's talk about some military aspects of the Panama Canal. It's one of the main choke points in the world, connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific. I believe all you know this now. Well, but when I talk about choke points, I'm talking about a possible war. You see what's happening in Yemen. Yemen, Bab el-Mandeb is a choke point. The Houthis guerrilla are there for years. They strike in U.S. Navy carriers, and the U.S. Navy cannot do anything about this. And a lot of traffic from oil and gas cross the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It's a choke point. All the choke points, Panamá, Suez, Bab el-Mandeb, Sonda, and others, they are, Gibraltar, they are strategic. More than 13,000 ships pass through the canal annually, moving more than 300 million tons of cargo. China has invested heavily in infrastructure in the surrounding area, which worries Washington. Well, I believe Washington Trump sees China everywhere. He looks under his desk and see China. I don't understand. The real problem of the United States is not China. I believe now it's Trump. The canal was expanded in 2016 with the construction of new locks, a project costing over 5 billion, allowing the passage of larger ships, the type New Panamax, but it not solve the problem. I will show later for you that the problem is a lot of complex that the new locks could not solve these questions. Well, there is a problem, a military problem with the channel. All the specialists in Second World War and Cold War, and now the thing is worst. They consider the canal indefensible. You not have to defend the canal with military force. It's not possible to defend all the canal because it has a lot of complexities, vulnerabilities, and other things. You cannot defend this. If the canal, if someone attacks the canal, it will obstruct it. It will be out for a time. You see, 3 years ago, a ship was broken in Suez Canal, and the canal went out for a lot of time. And this is a huge problem. A huge problem. Well, going to the final, we can say the following: the new carriers, the new generation of carriers, the nuclear carriers of the United States, the Nimitz class, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, and other carriers, they cannot pass through the channel, the canal. They cannot. The nuclear carriers cannot cross the canal, but the submarines can. So, United States, they know that the carriers cannot cross the channel, but they need the canal for the submarines. But it has a problem. When you cross the canal with a submarine, everybody knows that that submarine is going from Atlantic to Pacific or from Pacific to Atlantic. So they have a problem of espionage and other things. But I believe that because all these problems, the Panama Canal continue to have this importance for military operations. I know it have their vulnerabilities. It is indefensible, but it's very important to the operations of the United States. So I believe Trump will make a lot of pressure because he knows that it's important to the Navy. And the military, they have a lot of weight in the administration of the United States. They influence the decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Commander. So let's now turn to Sylvia Colombo. So please, Sylvia, open your microphone. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, can you all listen to me? Can you listen to me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, FAAP. It's a pleasure to be back now in the little screen. Last week I was there in person, but now I'm in this little box. As being the last one to talk, I'm afraid I have some points that I chose to speak about that are already covered by the incredible presentations before me. So I'll try to go faster through them. And I would like to focus my presentation on the human sacrifices that were made to make the canal possible, and also the background of Panama before the canal, and also putting some attention on a problem, a challenge that the canal, Panama, and the world will face in the next years and decades, which is the climate change. So here goes my presentation. The canal nowadays is a historical symbol born from centuries of global ambition, local resistance, and human sacrifice. And to understand this process, we need to begin long before Panama was even a country. I'll try to make it shortly. For most of its colonial history, Panama was a province of the Spanish Empire, valued mostly for one reason: location. As early as the 16th century, Spanish conquerors saw the Isthmus of Panama as a shortcut between oceans, a narrow strip of land where silver and gold plundered from Peru were carried across to be shipped to Europe. Even then, people dreamed of digging a canal. After independence from Spain in the early 19th century, Panama became part of Gran Colombia, and when that dissolved, it remained a province of Colombia. But throughout the 19th century, Panama was restless. There were over a dozen separatist movements. Many Panamanians felt neglected by Bogota. This relationship between Panama and Colombia was never easy. The region's identity, more Caribbean than Andean, only deepened that divide. Meanwhile, global powers had their eyes on the Isthmus. In the 1850s, an American-owned railroad was built across Panama, foreshadowing bigger ambitions. Then came the French. In the 1880s, Ferdinand de Lesseps, hero of the Suez Canal, launched a private effort to dig through Panama, but the project failed. Disease, landslides, and an underestimated geography led to the deaths of over 20,000 workers. By 1889, it all collapsed in scandal and bankruptcy. At the turn of the 20th century, the United States took up the dream. President Theodore Roosevelt believed the canal was key to Americans' global rise. Negotiations with Colombia failed, so the US backed a separatist uprising in Panama. In November 1903, with US warships offshore, Panama declared independence. Days later, Washington recognized the new nation and quickly signed a treaty giving the US control over the canal zone in perpetuity. Construction resumed in 1904, this time under US engineers. Doctors led campaigns to control yellow fever and malaria, learning from the French disaster. But even with better planning, the human cost was enormous. Tens of thousands of workers died, many from disease, others from landslides, exhaustions, or accidents. Most were Afro-Caribbean men recruited from Jamaica, Barbados, and other islands. They were paid less and treated worse. Their deaths were often unrecorded. Their stories, mostly of them, remain untold. Indigenous and rural communities were also displaced. Villages were flooded to make way for the canal and its massive artificial lakes. Entire families lost their lands, their homes, their place in their homes and their place in the history books. The Panama Canal opened in 1914, a triumph of engineering, no doubt. It transformed global trade and warfare. But for Panamanians, it came with a bitter irony. The canal ran through their land, but it did not belong to them. For nearly a century, the canal zone was governed like a US colony. Tensions grew, protests erupted, as it was mentioned before in this seminar. It wasn't until the Torrijos-Carter treaties in the late 70s that the US agreed to hand the canal back gradually. The final handover came on December 31, 1999. Today, the canal faces a different kind of threat: climate. Droughts are drying the lakes that feed the locks, and this is something that we should pay attention. Climate change might be a very important challenge for the ones that are leading with the canal, are dealing with the canal right now. Fewer ships can pass than before. Wait times are up, revenues are failing. Panama again is forced to adapt to forces beyond its control. And now another shadow reemerges, as it was already mentioned in this debate. In the US, some voices are openly questioning whether the canal is too strategic to be left to Panama alone. There is talk of reasserting American influence in the region under the argument of protecting global trade. It's not official policy, but it is a reminder that the canal has never stopped being political. The Panama Canal began with an imperial ambition. It was built on sacrifice, inequality, and a lot of struggle. And more than a century later, Panama still carries the burden of its geography. The challenge ahead is not just to keep the canal open in the face of climate disruption. It is to defend it once again from becoming someone else's prize. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thanks, Sylvia, for your presentation. As we still have around 20 minutes, let's start collecting questions from the audience. Who'd like to start? Please introduce yourself and ask your question and let us know to which participant would like to answer. Okay, so you here and one with the microphone here, we can take that, okay?
Hello everyone, my name is John. I have a question related with economics context. Beyond the last weeks, the global economy passed through into a recession, economic recession, and China have been able to try an agreement with the US, and we are seeing geopolitical tension around the world because the tariffs war by Donald Trump. My question is, it's possible that concession of China ports and purpose BlackRock, for example, would be proposed by the USA, and how it could impact the plot of the recent economic war?
Raising your question for. Who do you want to answer your question? All of them or any of them? Okay, so.
Yes. Yeah, the gentleman in the back. Yeah, just raise your hand again so Lourdes can take the microphone there. Okay. You can use this, Lourdes.
It's working. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other?
So, yeah,
Any
the
other
gentleman
question?
there. Yeah.
Can I make my question in Portuguese?
Yeah, we can translate afterwards. Yeah.
Minha pergunta é para o embaixador e para o comandante Farinazzo. Não seria importante para a soberania panamense recriar um exército ou uma força policial nacional mais forte para instaurar um certo poder sobre uma possível ameaça americana ou exterior?
Okay, so the question is whether Panama should create a stronger military force in order to prevent challenges against its sovereignty. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other question?
Okay, so I think those two, yeah, so we can go in the order. Oh, someone else? Yeah, please.
You have
Yeah.
another one.
Ok. Boa noite. Eu gostaria de saber que país estaria do lado do Panamá neste problema.
Okay, so who'd be take Panama's side facing this problem posed by Trump, those challenges? Okay, so I think we can start with the ambassador, then we go in the order, Professor Lazarus, then Comandante Farinazzo, and then after Sylvia, if you'd like to follow this order. So the first question again, just to repeat, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, could you please repeat the first question? Yeah? Okay.
So my question is about the context of the tariffs war by Donald Trump. If the concern of the China parts to BlackRock, for example, it could be one of the terms of USA to reduce the tariffs by China because we are experimenting economic crisis around the globe.
Yeah, so we have to discuss what will be the impacts of this crisis, the tariff rise on the Panama question, particularly considering the BlackRock firm, as Professor Lazarus, I think he approached that mainly. Yeah, so perhaps it targets more Professor Lazarus. But let's start here with the ambassador, then Professor Lazarus, then Comandante Farinazzo, and then Sylvia. Okay, you can start, ambassador. Thank you.
Não vai acreditar, mas não entendi bem o seu inglês. Pode dizer em português?
Ele basicamente pergunta no contexto da crise internacional, agora provocada pelo tarifaço do Trump, se não pode haver alguma barganha aí envolvendo, pelo que entendi, a questão do BlackRock, que é aquela empresa que controla ali, tem interesses no canal. Obrigado.
Okay. Well, first of all, the owner of Hutchinson, let me explain something. All the large corporations in China must have a relationship with the Communist Party. It's part of their system. That's one thing that people have to understand. Each country has a system. And actually, the PRC has offices within some of the large companies, a member of the political party, of the PRC party. So it's normal for them. For us, it's like, oh my God, you have a member of the Republican Party in my company. In Halliburton, it doesn't work that way, but it works for them. Now, if this person was so much into, it's today's China before it was Hong Kong, then he probably would have not sold it. He would have sold it probably to Chinese. But he's selling he's selling all his operations without asking the Chinese government. So I don't think Hutchinson was ever a problem. At least doesn't look like, because if he's selling to anybody, and it came BlackRock, which has a strong background of the United States, he's not a Chinese interest. He was not thinking in China. Now, we have to remember that BlackRock, that Hutchinson also has about 3 ports in England, I think 2 ports in Mexico, very near the border, US borders. And nobody talks about that. And having ports in England, my God, and in Mexico, but Panama, So I don't think it's a problem. I think the tariff, it's a little complicated. It's not hasn't to do with Hutchinson, and it will not lower the situation with China. It's a different thing.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. Now, Professor Lazarus would like to take on this as well.
Yeah, I agree with Ambassador Méndez. I'll just add a couple things. I do think, at least from the reporting that you're hearing from, say, the Wall Street Journal or Financial Times or Washington Post, was that from Xi Jinping's perspective, she did want to kind of use the BlackRock CK Hutchinson deal as potential leverage in a potential negotiation with Trump in order to lower tariffs. But Li Ka-shing, he decided to make the sale without the approval of the central government, right? And apparently that really made Xi Jinping very angry, because then that meant that it was a tool in the negotiation toolkit that they can now, no longer use. I thought that was quite interesting. Also, within China, there was a whole op-ed, actually 2 op-eds, that was in the local Hong Kong newspaper that is state-owned and run, criticizing CK Hutchinson for making the deal without the necessary approval from the central government, saying that they, sold out their country. Actually, they made some of the similar arguments that I had mentioned before that the U.S. is making, that if a Chinese company cedes these ports, then the U.S. could use it in order to, somehow prevent, say, certain cargo containers or whatnot that the Chinese need. So I found that very interesting, that their argument was very much a mirror image of what we've been saying, or at least what Western, or rather U.S. thinkers have been saying about the deal. With regard to tariffs, obviously it's still too soon to tell the global damage that it will cause, but people keep making comparisons to 1930, right? The Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930, when the U.S. put up these extremely high tariffs, upwards of 20% or so, that exacerbated the global depression, which then, of course, helped to exacerbate the issues that would lead to the Second World War. Now, again, I don't want to be too negative or pessimistic about this, but yes, I mean, I think there's going to be some very negative ramifications of these tariffs going forward.
Okay, thank you. So now, Commander Farinazzo, please.
Thank you. What's your name, please? João, thank you for the question. It's a wonderful question. When you build an army, you give it doctrine, you give the training, and you have some, it has a kind of political orientation. The question is, who is going to train the new army? It's a problem for the Latin American armies. The next lecture that I did here next week, I talk about Argentine army. It was never an army to fight wars. It was an army, it was a gendarmerie. All they made in all their history is a repression to his own people. It's a problem. It's a problem. So the question for the armies in Latin America is their agenda. It's not a national agenda. I saw some symposium in the armies of Brazil, Argentina, and the navies, and so, and the agenda in the symposium, it's an American agenda. It's not a Latin American agenda. We have other problems. The problems of the United States, of Europe, are not our problems. And they they try to shape the armies with these problems, with this agenda. And it doesn't work to us. We pay these armies. It doesn't work to us. I believe all the Latin American armies need to have a nationalist orientation turned to the necessities, the objectives of his people. So I have, just a minute, please, you say, I have a fear that if you build a new army, I don't know who is going to shape this, but say your question.
Including the national army in Brazil, you think it... Sorry, eu vou falar em português, o senhor entende. Você acha que até mesmo o exército brasileiro se encaixaria nesse cenário de não ter sua própria soberania, se a soberania é pintada pela América do Norte, por assim dizer? Já não é uma soberania original, uma soberania clássica, por assim dizer.
Eu acho que isso tem. I think this we have to make a debate on this. Eu acho, I think that the society has to speak on these things. I think is the whole phrase is the war is something very serious to be led by the military. I think all the society has to give his opinion about the purpose of the United Forces, because you are paying this, and this not cheap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now Sylvia would like to take on any of those issues, and after we give the word back to the ambassador who'd like to say a last thing about one of the questions. So Sylvia, please.
No, I'm okay with that. I feel
good. Thank you, Sylvia. So now the ambassador, please.
I have to clarify, after 1989 invasion of United States to Panama, after the invasion, Panama decided to abolish the military from constitutionally. I mean, we cannot have an army, and that's it. We have police forces, and that can change. And simply regards with the tariffs, just make. I was a member of a negotiating team many years ago. I used to have hair, but that time on tariffs and trade in Central America. And I think Mr. Trump was right in putting tariffs. The only thing that I think did wrong was precipitation, because he didn't give time to negotiate. It's clear, we all know that. All of their diplomats that are into trade, we know. I even work in the OMC WTO thing in Switzerland, and we know that there are countries that put tariffs to the United States higher than they do. But then, by not giving time, it has created chaos. And it was not necessary, the chaos. It was enough to send their teams and say, you have this, I want this. And it will take a few more months, but in that case, what happening now with the stock exchange all over, that is costing everybody money, everybody, even them. So tariff is good, but you have to be fair on the trade, on the balance.
Okay, so we still have a few minutes left, 6 minutes. So one additional question here, please. Yeah. And then we wrap up with Lourdes' comments. Okay.
I have one question. I'm kind of concerned about this worst case scenario that is World War III. I mean, so we have now a multipolar world, as you all put it. And Russia invaded Ukraine, China building artificial islands in South China Sea and getting Taiwan maybe in the coming next years. In this new world, maybe Trump talking about getting Panama or Greenland doesn't sound so crazy. So in this worst case scenario, World War III scenario, would you say that Panama Canal would for sure go to the United States of America?
Just a clarification. China is not going to invade Taiwan. Taiwan belongs to China. It's an autonomous region. I can speak from our Confucius Institute director here. So you can, make something else, but not invading Taiwan. That's not the correct. I think way to refer to it, okay? So I don't know who is going to answer this question, Vinícius.
Yes, I would like to take on this prospects of Third World War. Perhaps we can do a final round of very brief interventions around 2 minutes each. Who'd like to start?
Very
Perhaps
quickly,
the
because we are
ambassador.
about to finish, right?
Would like to take on this, ambassador?
War, Third World War. The only concern that Panamanians have is that it seems that nobody's thinking in our own national security. Everybody's thinking of somebody else's national security. Our national security, for us, we strictly believe in neutrality. And you know why? I could compare with Switzerland. Do we have to have Switzerland armies, outside armies to protect Switzerland? Doesn't work that way. And they're pretty safe. If you start pushing Switzerland, do you think Switzerland will be wise for them to join NATO? Because they think there's going to be a war? If they join NATO, they automatically becomes a target. So I think Panama should remain as it is, hands off, and that's our best protection. And I believe that everybody else believes that. Not only us, everybody in Latin America that uses Canal doesn't want the Canal to be weaponized politically or be a target. And this is not me talking, this is the whole population. It's the whole country. We might not have an army, but
okay.
Let's leave it that way.
Thank you. So very briefly, 2 minutes, Professor Lazarus. Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on hypotheticals about what would cause World War III, but I will say that with regard to tariffs, a argument that could be made is that really Trump's global tariffs are a way to get after China, right? Because what has been happening over the past several years is that Chinese manufacturers have been using a bunch of third countries in order to, be used as the back door to export over to the United States, right? So think Vietnam, think Mexico, right? And so by raising the tariffs on everywhere, especially on Vietnam, it was 46%. I think one of the highest tariffs that he slapped on all of the countries. He's stopping the export of excess capacity that the PRC has been doing around the world. And I think that's going to cause some real pain since China is going through economic issues of its own domestically, whether it be a real estate issue that's a bubble that's about to pop, local and municipal debt, 20% youth unemployment. And so they've been focused a lot more on exports. And now that those exports are going to be shrunken even more, they're going to have to do something different, maybe somehow spurring domestic consumption in the future. But we'll see.
Okay, thank you. So briefly, Commander Farinazzo, and final thoughts on this question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I cannot say to you that we will have the Third World War. All I can say is United States has a lot of time. And I'll explain for you in a few words. They spend $1 trillion by year for weapons, and his Navy is oldest all years, is losing size by years, and their ship are very expensive in relation to the Chinese Navy. First line warship from the United States costs 3 or 5 times the cost of the same ship that China does. Today, China has the biggest navy in the world. In 2030, the Chinese Navy will be 50% bigger than the United States Navy. So if United States wants to go to war, they have a little time. I don't believe that we are going to a third world war, but I cannot be sure on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Sylvia, any final thoughts or this question you'd like to take on this?
I can only say that I'm a journalist, and journalists are not good futurologists. We are pretty much with our feet on the present, so I won't put myself at risk and try to guess if we're going to have a third world war or not. We are not good futurologists.
Okay, so thanks, Sylvia. Perhaps a last thought, very briefly, as the chair here, I'd like to thank you again for your presence. Thanks, Lourdes, for coordinating the program and organizing the seminar series. Thank you, thanking the audience at home, thanking the ambassador here who delivered a very great talk, Professor Lazarus, Commander Farinazzo, and Sylvia. And in fact, doing futurology is quite bad exercise. However, we have more and more evidence that we are in a world in which globalization is over, and more than globalization, perhaps the entire world order of the last 80 years. What await us are definitely not good times, and specifically countries have some time to find a way to move forward in these uncharted waters. Also, they have to think more and more about doing their own homework in order to keep ties, in order to avoid what could be the most likely outcome, a domino effect in which countries would raise tariffs, beggar their neighbor policies would return, and therefore the prospects of a new war could arise. Thank you.
Vinícius, before we finish, I would like to invite you to next Monday, same time, same place, and also a stream on YouTube. We are going to have ambassador, Uruguayan ambassador. My country will be represented. And then we will have Botswana, the ambassador from Botswana and Cabo Verde. They are going to discuss the new order, international order, if there is a new international order. So you all are invited to come in person here at FAAP campus or to watch it online. Thank you very much, right? And congratulations. This was a very wonderful discussion. And my goodness, we could stay here longer, right? And we need the Chinese view next time because China was mentioned many, many times. Thank you very much. And thank you, Professor Lazarus and Sylvia. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you with us today. Vinícius, you finish.
Okay, so thank you very much and look forward to see you again next week. See you on Monday, hopefully. Bye-bye.